there. In this session, let us discuss a couple of topics: creating a database user account, and then connecting to the database as a newly created user, and then executing some database queries. So I have logged in as Postgres user on my Linux operating system. As you know, Postgres user is created by the Postgres SQL RPM installer. So this is the default database user. You don't have to do anything additional because this user comes with everything set up. You just do PSQL, it gets connected to the database. And when I do list, I can see the default databases created already. So generally, we don't operate as this user. We create a separate database to work on our databases. So we will see how to create database user using different ways. The Postgres database supplies a command line tool called create user. If I look at the help of this utility, you can basically see several options of creating user account with different access privileges. You can achieve the same thing by using SQL query from the Postgres SQL prompt. So the standard way of doing this is by connecting to the Postgres SQL command prompt, and then once you connect to the database, you can execute SQL queries. So if I list the databases using /l command, I can see the default databases. There are several ways of executing SQL queries. So this is the standard way. I've connected to the database from the terminal, and then in the database prompt, I can execute commands and queries. The other way is you can connect to a remote host. From the remote host, you can connect to this database server using database client software. It could be like pgadmin, which is a graphical user interface tool, or you can use your IDEs, right? Your application development environments like VS Code, etc. Now, I have a test database created here, which is called test database. I can execute the SQL query right from here, drop database, test database. So the database is dropped, deleted. When I list, I don't see that database anymore. The other way is you can use an editor here. See, when you have this long, then it's not convenient to type them on the terminal. So the convenient way is using command /e that opens an editor with the previously ran command, whatever command you ran previously. So I don't want to run this command again. So I can delete all of that, and then I can start typing new command. So we thought of creating an user account. So we'll do that. So we are creating user called Bill. So create role Bill with credentials, with all the privileges. I'm giving user Bill login privilege, and I don't want Bill to be a super user, so I say no super user. And I want Bill to be able to create a database. And I want Bill to inherit the privileges. And I don't want him to do any replication. So I'm not granting replication privileges. So I'm not setting any connection limit. So when I say -1, it's unlimited. And then I'm setting a password called change me. So you can alter the password later on. to set to whatever you want. So let me check again. Create role Bill with login, no super user, create DB, inherit, no replication, connection limit -1, and the password is change me, and then escape :WQ. That means save this and quit. The moment you do this, this query gets executed. And if everything is successful, that means there's no error in the query, you will get the response. So you have, it got successfully created, so you got the response as create role. And if I now list users /du, if I list the database users, I basically see two users, the default one, which is Postgres, who is super user, has create role, create DB, replication, bypass RLS privileges. And we have our newly created role, Bill, who has only create DB privilege. Now, let us try to connect to the database as user Bill. So I quit from the database using /q command. And now I'll try to connect using user Bill. So I do see an error here. It says error fatal, peer authentication failed for user Bill. So there are several ways that you can configure your Postgres to authenticate. Right now, it is trying a mechanism called peer authentication. In peer authentication, it basically tries to authenticate as operating system user. It checks if you are logged in as user Bill. No, you are not logged in as user Bill. So the username should exactly match as the operating system user. I logged in as Postgres. So if I try to connect using peer authentication method, it doesn't work. So we will make necessary configuration changes to make this work. So last time we have seen the Postgres was installed in var pgsql. Sorry, var lib pgsql, and then we have a data folder, and then we have to edit file called pghpa.conf. So here we see several ways of authentication mechanisms that are configured. So on the local host, which is basically a socket connection method, we have configured only peer authentication. On IPv4 and IPv6, basically a network connection using a TCP IP, we only have ident method. So ident method is again authenticates against operating system. So you have to log in as operating system user matching the database user. So we don't want that. So I'm copying this line, YYP, and then same for IPv6, YYP. So going to the end of the line and then changing the authentication method to password and changing the authentication method to password. So I'm basically configuring PostgreSQL to authenticate a TCP connection using password, both IPv4 and IPv6. Now save and quit. So once you make changes to this file, you have to restart your PostgreSQL service, or you have to reload the configuration, right? So since my database is not in production, it is safe for me to restart it. But if your database is in production, you have to make sure that you have permissions to restart it. You have necessary approvals to restart the database. So systemctl restart PostgreSQL service. Remind that the databases are critical. You can't restart the database without having necessary approvals. So make sure nobody or no application is using database, then only you restart it. But this is just for testing. You can do it. So we have restarted the Postgres SQL service, and then let's see if I can log in now. Since it is a network connectivity, I have to specify the host name as localhost, and then I have to ask it to prompt for a password, capital W. So option capital W will prompt you for the password. So we know we have given password as change me, but it looks like that doesn't work. It says database bill does not exist. So that is considering bill as a database. Okay, so you also have to supply a database to connect to the database. The user bill doesn't have any database associated, so you are getting that error. So what we do now, let us connect to the database as Postgres user, as user Postgres, and then let's create a database. So we know how to do this. So I use again the editor method /e, and then I can type the command, the query here, create database. Let me call this as testdb, and then I want owner is equals to bill. I'm setting encoding to UTF-8. That's the default encoding, and we are setting the connection limit to unlimited, and save and quit. So basically it created a database. Now when I list it, I can see it as database owned by user bill, encoding UTF-8. Now let me quit from the database, and now I'll try to connect again as user bill and database as testdb. Sorry, there was a typo. A space is required here. Okay, I'm typing the password here, and then there you go. I got connected to the database testdb, right? If I have to list my tables in the database, so I can do display tables. That doesn't work because I don't have any tables created here. So we have to create a database, a relation or a table in the database in order to be able to list. So now let me quit from here.